the 9th, 1980, the original Friday the 13th was released in theaters nationwide. Jason Voorhees was born. One of the greatest slasher franchises in the history of motion pictures was alive. 45 years ago today, May the 9th, 1980, it is now Friday, May the 9th, 2025, 7:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What's going on, everybody? My name's Dave McRae. This is episode 331 of McRae Live. I'm coming to you live from the Voice Man Studios in Toronto, Canada. And tonight we're going to be talking some Friday the 13th, the original. I want to know, what are some of your favorite moments? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Why do you put it so low in your list? Tell me why you hate this movie. Tell me why you don't like this movie. I want to know, ladies and gentlemen, why you think this movie is a piece of crap. Brandon gets it started with the member chat and says, my favorite moment is when they think they spot something across the lake while standing on the dock. It just always seemed creepy as hell. Thank you, Brandon, for the member chat. Brandon's been a member, of course, you know, one of our great mods here. 18 months on the payroll. Yes. Look, despite what you might think about the original Friday the 13th, it genuinely has some really, really creepy moments. And I had to bring this into the, it usually sits down there on the wall. But I had to take it off the wall and bring it in front of the camera today. This is, of course, I have the original Friday the 13th poster, theatrical poster, the key art, on I had it plaqued about 15 years ago. So it's on wood and it sits nicely against, on the wall beside A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, and also the original Halloween. And I won't be able to get this thing all in the camera here on because it's so big. It's actually bigger than the standard, which is usually, I think, 24 by 36. This is bigger than that. Whatever the one up from that is. What is it? 24 by 36, and you're going up, 36 by 48, 24 by 36, 36 by 40. So something like that. It's above that. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And there's a lot of dust across the top here. Got a dust, Dave. Got a dust. There it is. There it is. Yes. Let me just put my microphone over here. Oh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Love it. Happy 45th birthday to Friday the 13th. That's right, bitches. Oh, that's right. Happy 45th birthday. You're all doomed. Hey! 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 Dave, what's wrong? Nothing. Why? Oh, no, just help me in the vitamin. Hey! There's the... There it is. Happy 45th birthday to Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, folks. The original Friday the 13th was released today in 1980. Look at the size of my head. And I got a big head. Look at my head. And look how big this poster is. I mean, look at the size of this thing. This is huge. Huge. It's a lot of poster. A lot of big poster. A big poster, one of the best posters, one of the biggest, the bestest, the brightest. Thank you, Mr. Brosnan, for coming in. A lot. Anyway, so, happy 45th birthday to the original Friday the 13th. And, but this doesn't get a lot of love. This doesn't get a lot of love. Of course, as many of you know, it is one of my favorites in the franchise for sure. It's in my top 4 or 5. This usually gets. I think the general consensus is that it's usually not that great because it doesn't have Jason in it, and I think that's why people don't like it. But I mean, I think it's underrated. Personally, I know it doesn't have Jason in it. And maybe if you got into the Jason movies and you went back and watched it, you'd be disappointed because it didn't have Jason in it. But I was one of those kids, actually. The very first time I watched this movie, the original Friday the 13th, wasn't until I was about 9 years old. So we're looking at, what was that, 1988. And I remember when I first watched it, I was visiting my dad. So my parents divorced in the early 80s. My dad lived on his own in Toronto. We lived in a town north of Toronto, about half hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And when my parents divorced, obviously we stayed in the town and my dad moved into the city. And he was there until about 1986. And then my dad moved to Ottawa, which is Canada's capital, which is about 4.5, 5 hours east of Toronto. And because he got a job offer out there. And so I would go in. Now, I ended up moving in with my father in August of 1989 because I spent my teenage years living in Ottawa. That's where I went to high school and where I met Bruce and, all that. But before that, like between 86 and 89, I would go and visit my dad, like, for Christmas or for a summer vacation or, whatever the case is, right? And one of the times I was there, and this has to have been, I'm going to say 88. I mean, maybe it was before that. Maybe it was 87. It could have been 87 because he moved in 86. So it could have been 87, but I'm thinking it's 88. And I had seen all the Friday the 13th movies up to that point. Now remember, at this time, there would be no Jason Takes Manhattan. That didn't exist yet. New Blood, I think, was around, but just around, right? I mean, this is in the thick of it all, right? And, but I had still not seen the original Friday the 13th. Now, I knew it didn't have Jason in it. I mean, I know he's there at the end, but you know what I mean. Just like how, if you were a kid growing up through the 1980s, you would know, like, we'd say things. I mean, kids, teenagers, it does, say, oh yeah, Halloween 3. Yeah. The one without Michael. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, the one without Michael, right? Well, the original Friday the 13th was like, oh yeah, the one without Jason. You know what I mean? That's kind of how like it was known, And so I always knew it didn't have Jason in it. And I had two older siblings. Well, I have three older siblings, but my two older brothers are 11 and 9 years older than me. So, they were up on all of this. And so I knew it didn't have Jason in it. And I, of course, was very into Jason but I wanted to watch it. I wanted to see it. And I think as I was visiting my dad and my stepmom, they were going out for some reason, probably some, media function that my dad had to attend. And they had hired a babysitter. I can still see her kind of in my mind. I think she had short hair. I don't know her name. I don't know who she is. I mean, if I'm 46 now, she's probably in her 60s now. I'm not sure. But at that time, I think she was like, 20 something. And I don't know who she was. No idea. But they hired a babysitter because I was only like 8 or 9, right? And of course, we also had my younger half sister who at that time was like 1. So anyways, long story short, or short story long, we rented a movie and we probably rented a few movies. And I remember, I was all into the horror. My dad didn't give a shit. My mom didn't give a shit, but my stepmother, who has also passed, she passed about 9 years ago. It's crazy to think that all the parental figures in my life, including my own parents, are gone. But anyway, so she didn't like that. She thought I was going to grow up to become an axe murderer, and she was one of those. No, yeah, and can you imagine what the kid? The kids have to deal with today with Terrifier and all. Oh my God! I mean, it's apples and oranges, compared to what kids have to deal with today. But I remember we rented this movie. I guess my dad convinced her or something to that degree, and we rented it, and I watched it. So the very first time I watched the original Friday the 13th from 1980 would have been in about 1987, 88. I was a little late to the party on it, but I remember really liking it. And I remember really liking it because I liked the mood, the setting. I just thought it was creepy and it was eerie. And I didn't particularly, I don't remember particularly caring that it didn't have Jason in it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't care. I don't remember, and so I've always been a fan of the original Friday the 13th. And again, I know it doesn't have Jason in it, but I do think it, that aside, I do think it's still one of the better earlier slasher movies of that time. I'm not saying it's a great movie. None of the Friday the 13th movies are great movies. You know what I mean? They're schlocky B movies. I mean, that's what they are. I mean, they're just rinse, repeat. A lot of the slasher movies are. But I would say that in terms of, I think as disjointed as the Halloween films are, I think there are better Halloween movies than there are Friday the 13th movies. Same with Elm Street. But I think that the Friday the 13th franchise is obviously very consistent in terms of its continuity, as bonkers as it gets. But I would say that I've always been a fan of this first movie. And it's celebrating 45 years today, folks. So those of you that are just tuning in, today it was released. The original Friday the 13th, Jason, Friday the 13th, was birthed today on May the 9th, 1980, 45 years ago today. And again, if you're just joining us, I know there's not a lot of people in here tonight, but this is the theatrical Friday the 13th poster that I have. This is a huge poster that hangs on my wall. And yeah. There it is. You're all doomed. Doomed. It's got a death kiss. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate that. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Sawane's Night, a member for 14 months. Amazing. Sawane sends in $14. Sends in a member chat and says, just to show how big Friday was in 1980, its adjusted gross is like 230 million. No wonder why they made a sequel. Is that the adjusted gross for accounting for inflation? Incredible. Yeah, no, look, a lot of these movies were huge. And at that time, this kind of thing was very new. This kind of B-movie schlocky. I mean, to make this kind of money, teenagers running out to the theaters and seeing these horror movies. And I mean, listen, kids always, Wolfman, The Mummy, Dracula. I mean, kids always went to see horror movies, but this was a new breed, the slasher subgenre. I mean, it was the golden age, right? Between 78 and 84, 85. I think I'll throw 85 in there. Once you hit 86, like I've often said, that's when, the trajectory begins to kind of go downwards. And then by 1990, I mean, you're done. Right. But anyway, I just saw this cute article today. This cute article. Yeah, it's adorable. This fun article. I'm not familiar with the website, but anyways, they just say Friday the 13th turns 45. 8 things you didn't know about the iconic film. Well, let's see if you really didn't know these things. I suspect most of us probably do know these things, but let's see. And if you think it sounds weird or whatever, feel free to fact check me. Don't shoot the messenger. Friday the 13th turns 45. 8 things you didn't know about the iconic slasher film, according to the website. Remind Magazine. I don't know what that is, but anyway. All right, let's just jump right to this. The first Jason had a band called First Jason. I didn't know that, but hey, he wants to capitalize on his short-lived fame. I get it. Did you know that? Did you know that the first Jason, what's his name? Ari Felch? I forget his name. Anyways, he had a band called First Jason. Well, there you go. It's actually a good name for a band. Betsy Palmer, number 2. Betsy Palmer thought the script was a piece of junk. I did know that. Did you know that? She thought it was a piece of shit. It's kind of common knowledge. Number 3, cinematographer Barry Abrams had a horrifying encounter with a beaver. I didn't know that. Let's read this here. While cinematographer Barry Abrams was filming Friday the 13th, a beaver tried to bite his genitals. As Dave Grove wrote in the book On Location in Blairstown, The Making of Friday the 13th, quote, he went down to the lake to take a pee, and the beaver snapped at his privates. He ran back up and said, there's an anti-Semitic beaver down at the lake. Grove recounted to Entertainment Weekly with a laugh in 2013. These people were out in the middle of nowhere. Amazing. I didn't know that. The film score has a spoiler. Or are they talking about the kill, ma, ma, ma? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, right? I don't know what else that would be. Let's find out. I was right. The kick, ma, ma, ma. Sound effect heard in Harry Manfredini's Friday the 13th score hints at the fact that it's Mrs. Voorhees who is the killer. If you remember the movie, there's a scene towards the end where there's a close-up on Mrs. Voorhees' mouth. The composer once explained to slasherama.com, quote, it goes between the sound of Jason saying, kill her, mommy, kill her, then the mother's voice, and back and forth. So I got the idea of taking the ki from kill and the ma from mommy, but spoke them very harshly, distinctly, and rhythmically into a microphone and ran them through this 70s echo thing. It came out as you hear today. So every time there was the perspective of the stalker, I put it into the score. Yes, that is true. And of course, nobody knew this in the 80s because it sounded and still sounds like ch, 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 ha, ha, ha. I mean, that's what it sounds like. And every kid in the 80s said that. Nobody knew. I mean, there was no internet. There was no social media. I guarantee, I mean, there was probably somebody out there that knew, some nerd that was reading, Fangoria every 5 minutes. But most people just, I mean, you heard ch, 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 ha, ha, ha. And so that's what we thought it was. And it wasn't until years later. I mean, I was probably it was probably the early 2000s, when I realized it was I was like, oh, cool. I mean, listen, I'm sure some people did, but I didn't. 6, a prequel series may be forthcoming. Well, it's not maybe, it is. We know that. Number 7, there was a previous spin-off series, sort of. Okay, yeah, I think I remember this. A syndicated show called Friday the 13th, the series, I remember this, began airing in 1987, but it had nothing to do with Jason. or any camp counselors in danger. Instead, it was about an antique store that sold cursed objects. Its main connection to the franchise was that it was co-created by Frank Mancuso Jr., who produced multiple Friday the 13th sequels. Despite the lack of connection to the film, it still ran for 3 seasons and 72 episodes. 3 seasons and 72 episodes. Holy shit. They probably got more episodes than Freddy's Nightmares did. Wow. Amazing. Was that number 8? Are we done? Yeah, that was number 8. Okay, well, there's number 8. The summer camp was real. Yes, of course we knew that, and is still in operation. Yes, Camp Nobi Bosco. There it is. And there's that hill, which is very clear in the film. So yes, I did know that. Anyways, again, most of these, look, if you're a diehard horror fan, if you're a diehard Friday the 13th fan, you probably knew all of these. But if you're not a diehard Friday the 13th fan, then maybe some of these were new to you. I don't know. The only one that was new, the only one that I did not know was, would have been the... number 3, that the cinematographer had a horrifying experience with a beaver who nearly bit his balls off. And the first one, that, what's his face there? Let me get this. I was going to say Ari Fleischer. Ari Fleischer. That's so funny. Ari Lehman had a band called First Jason. That I did not know. But interesting nonetheless, folks. Interesting nonetheless. Josh McKenna sends a $9.99. Thank you, Josh, and says, I know we talked about this in the past stream, but I can't believe they actually did that to a snake. I love the first Friday, and I love seeing Kevin Bacon in it, but I can't get that snake out of my mind. Yeah, very sad, I mean, look, it was a different time, it was a different era. It was a different time. It was also an independent production. It was distributed by Paramount, yes, but this wasn't like a major, blockbuster. It was an indie film by and large. And, the rules and regulations around indie films at that time is not what it is, or around films, period is not what it was. And so it was a very different era, a very different time, for better and for worse. And nobody knew, and nobody ever thought that it would ever come out, or, whatever the case was. And so, yeah, I, as a big animal lover myself, I was heartbroken when I realized that the snake you see chopped in half in the movie is actually a real snake. They murdered a snake in the movie for the scene. Like, they actually killed the snake, and the snake handler was livid. That just wasn't a random snake from, I don't think it was anyway. I think it was actually brought in. Oh, it was so unnecessary. Just bring in a rubber snake and kill the rubber snake. Anyway, I don't want to get on my soapbox about that again, but yeah, no, I wasn't happy about that either. But it's fascinating. Let me see what some of you are saying here. Tom Hungarian rates, the movies, yes, he's got the OG low on the list as well. He's got 4, 2, 6, 3, 5, 7, and the remake all before it. So it's in his bottom tier. A lot of people do. Let me see here. Daz says 6-2-4-5 remake. 7-1. Freddy vs. Jason 3. Oh, he's got it above 3. Kenny Pham says, I love the first film without Voorhees, 1980, filmed in 1979. Yeah, such a huge twist at the end. Yeah, I think it's, again, I do understand why people don't like it, but, or why it usually appears on people's bottom tier. But, and yes, again, maybe the acting and the reveal is a bit theatrical, and it was a different time, right? Late 70s. But I think there is some good stuff in it. I actually think there's some really, in that first 4 movies, but especially in that first movie, there's some good stuff in it, man. There's some genuine moments of real good suspense, no matter, on par with any horror movie at that time. Not just a slasher movie, but any movie. 2 of my favorites, I've talked about this, but 2 of my favorites are when, what's her face there? She's in bed. It's raining outside. There's only the 4 or 5 of them there at the camp. The kids haven't arrived yet. It's a thunder, it's thunder outside, thunderstorm. And you hear, help me. It's just, I think of the big picture, right? And I look at that, and not only is it brilliantly done in any movie, let's just say this isn't a Friday the 13th movie. You do that in a movie now, it'd be great. It's genuinely creepy when you watch it. It's a great moment. I know it, for those of you that may hate the movie, I'm not saying it's going to change, the film for you, but it's a great moment. The fact that it was low budget this might be part logistics, part creative, but the fact that they didn't light up everything like a Christmas tree, and, it looks genuinely dark. So when they run from cabin to cabin or they're outside in the rain, you really only see their flashlight beams. It's not lit up with these big, 50K lights shining down, and you know what I mean? It doesn't have any, it's just, if there is some light, it's kind of in the background to sort of give it some depth. But that scene is genuinely freaky. And I look at it also from imagine that actually happening. Imagine you're at a camp. Okay. Imagine this. Just imagine this. Just humor me for a moment. You're at a camp. You're a camp counselor. You've gone up early, a week or 2 early, to get the camp into shape. You're there with other counselors, right? There's only 4 or 5 of you there. The camp has a history. There's that. And it's a thunderstorm. You're in your cabin. No big deal. Maybe it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. Who knows? You're reading. You're inside. You can hear, the rain. You can hear, the thunder. And you hear, now you're alone. There's no children. There's no children at the camp yet. And you hear out in the rain amongst the storm, amongst the sound of the rain falling and the thunder rumbling, you hear, "Help me! Help me!" And it's clearly a child. What the fuck? And you're in the middle of nowhere. This isn't a situation where, like, if I went to bed and I heard a child, like, first of all, I'd be like, oh my God. But your brain makes it make sense. Now, you don't know what's going on. You're like, oh my God, there's a child. Oh my God, I got to open my door. Hello, are you okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, but your brain doesn't go, what? That's impossible. But it would in this situation. You'd be like, a child in the middle of nowhere, who knows how many miles away from civilization, and help me. Like, what the fuck, man? I've always found, and a storm and the rain, like, what the hell? Love it. One of my favorite movies in any Friday the 13th, period. Or one of my favorite moments in any Friday the 13th movie, period. And then the other one that I really like, too, is when, I forget her name now, too, but the one that's, no, it's the same girl. It's the same girl. Well, it's both, actually. It's the girl that gets killed with the axe to the head, because she goes into the bath, and I love the way it's lit, and I love the way that they show that depth down that corridor towards the stalls. I love that the stalls are just curtains, which would make sense. It's a camp, I get it, late 70s, early 80s. And I love that there's just this one singular sort of, key light, kind of just like, not key light, but just sort of practical, kind of just hanging over the stall. So just kind of like it kind of, I just love the way that they lit it. And she's at the sink and she looks over, and just her POV, just looking down the corridor, it's just very eerie. It's just a very, very eerie looking shot. And it's like, that's kind of creepy. You know what I mean? And I love it too. Later when, again, I always forget their names. I don't know why. But when the girl that was in the bed, help me. Chat room will let me know their names. I always forget their names. Their character. Elizabeth? Beth? Betty? Anyway, she sadly died like 20 years ago. Anyway, she goes into the bathroom. The girl's already been killed with the axe, but and she looks down that same corridor, and there are these fingers on the other side of the curtain. Have you ever noticed this? Now, Friday the 13th, hardcore fans of Friday the 13th, Brenda, that's it. I got to remember this. Brenda. Very 80s name. Brenda, Stacy, Jill, Amanda, Allison, Jennifer. Very, very 80s names. My sister's name is Jill. Of course, she was born in the 60s, but she was a teenager in the 80s. But anyway, early 80s. But so when she looks down that corridor, and you don't really notice it at first until the fingers move away. Then you go, oh, because you don't really notice it because it's very still. And then when the fingers kind of, I forget if they come around and then they move away, or if they're already there and then they move away. It's one or the other. Maybe it's both. But it's so great. It's so eerie. It's so eerie and so creepy. It's so subtle. Like, that's the kind of fucking shit I love, man. That's the kind of, that's building suspense, building that anticipation. You know what I mean? So I love that whole bathroom, I say a set, but they shot it at real camp. So, they didn't build it, but in terms of that location, I love that. It's just genuinely creepy. I think, another scene that I really like in the original Friday the 13th is towards the beginning of the movie, or is at the very beginning of the movie, when we open in 1958. And It's clearly a younger Pamela Voorhees, 20 years earlier. And she opens the cabin door, and kids are at the camp here. And she walks through, and the POV is looking down. Like, you can kind of hear off, the counselors doing their sing-along. But as she opens this cabin door and she walks through, it's POV. It's the first time we hear, or as it really does sound like, and it's fantastic. Like, it's eerie, it's creepy. The soundtrack, ding ling ling ling, ding ling ling ling, ding ling ling. If you're a Friday the 13th fan, you know what you know what I'm doing. And so, like, it's so great. And the camera looks down, right? And sort of, tracks or pans from left to right. And if you look carefully, you can actually see little kids sleeping. You can see little kids sleeping in their beds. And it's so eerie. It's so creepy. It's like, oh my God. Because we never got to see actual kids at a camp until Jason Lives in 1986. Because when you get to, I think anyway, right? I think, because 1 didn't have kids. I don't think 2 did, 3 didn't, 4 didn't, 5 did. I mean, so you actually, you don't get a story with them necessarily, but it's just a very, very cool, creepy moment at the very beginning of the film when she walks through. Of course, we don't know who it is at that time, but she's walking through, and you're, and you ding, 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 and you just see those kids. Oh, it's so eerie. It's such a great shot. Of course, there's Kevin Bacon's boner. Kevin Bacon's boner. There's probably people going, what? What the hell are you talking about? If you know, you know. And I love the shot where, and I've actually, there are some people that are just realizing this now, but I've always noticed this. I've known this or noticed this many, many moons ago, but there's that great shot where they're out, I forget who it is now, but they think they see somebody. There's a scene where one of the counselors thinks they see somebody walking into one of the cabins. And if you look very closely, you can see sort of the arm of the raincoat of Mrs. Voorhees. Just sort of subtly move into the cabin or by the window or something. I forget now. But I've always noticed that. And obviously the bigger screen you have, because of HD and 4K and all this kind of stuff, obviously it becomes more noticeable. But I even noticed it on, VHS. But then again, I used to watch really close to the television. But that's a cool moment. Again, running in the storm from cabin to cabin in the rain and all that kind of stuff. Genuinely dark and moody and atmospheric and claustrophobic. Just some great, great moments there. There's cheesy moments like, Ralph and his "you're all doomed" and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's some real great moments. I think anyway. Super chat from Tom Hungarian, $5. Thanks, Tom. Says, Dave, hoping for Edmonton or Toronto Stanley Cup. McDavid and Matthew should be a fun finals. In my opinion, 2 Canadian teams be cool. I take Edmonton to win the cup this year. Yeah, that'd be cool to see 2 Canadian teams win the cup or be in the Stanley Cup final. As a Torontonian myself, of course, the Sabres are my favorite team, but since they're not in it, I am rooting for the Leafs. Actually, they're playing right now. For those of you that are just joining us, we're talking Friday the 13th today, the original, because it's celebrating its 45th anniversary today. It was released today, May the 9th, 1980. The original was released, and I took this off my wall to show you guys. I have a hallway over here where I have a bunch of movie posters. And I have the original Friday the 13th, the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the original Halloween. And so I thought it would be apropos of me to take it off the shelf. But this isn't just a standard 24 by 36. This is whatever the one up above it is, 30, 6 by 4. I forget what. It's huge. This is huge. And this is it right here. There you go. Kick, ma, ma. A choo, 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 ha, ha, ha. A kick, ma, ma. A choo, 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 ha, ha, ha. Yeah, that's it, folks. There you go. I mean, look at the size of this thing. I got a big head, and look at this. It's huge. Oh, huge. A big one. Thank you, Donald. It's a big one. But very cool indeed. 27 by 40. That might be it. Yeah, that might be it. Yeah. 36 by 48. No, that wouldn't be it. 27 by 40. That is probably it. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But I love it. So yeah, like, I mean, just, again, I understand that it's not, a lot of people's favorites. I totally get that. I totally understand that. But for me, I'm just a big fan of that original movie. I think where it tends to fall apart for people, and rightly so, I mean, fair enough, is the fact that it is designed as a whodunit, and I always called it a whodunit. But it was really, Darren Sands of the Slaughtered Lamb, who had said a number of times, well, it's not really a whodunit because there's never an opportunity to know who did it. And that is true. That is 100% true. It does not follow the traditional whodunit rules. And I think I just sort of always called it a whodunit because, on a very simplistic surface level, you could refer to it that and people know what you mean. But it is true that if you are being specific about it, it's not. Because we were never introduced to her. And I think, so when it gets to that and it gets to the end, especially in retrospect, listen, it was a huge hit. It was a big movie in 1980. And, somebody, I forget who it was now, but they just looked at the box office and adjusted it for inflation, and it's something like $200-something million. And so it was a big hit. That's why they did another one, and they did another one, and another one, and another one, another one. And they didn't just do more. They fast-tracked these things. I mean, they were relatively easy to make anyway, but, the original was 1980, part 2 was 1981, part 3 was 1982, and then there was a break. And then they did part 4 in 1984, and then 85, then 86, and so, I mean, they churned these things out like butter, man. I mean, it was wild. And so that first movie was a big hit. And at that time, nobody was thinking that, they didn't have Jason. Nobody knew who the hell Jason was. He was the kid that came out at the end. Great jump scare, great moment. One of the great jump scares, one of the great final jump scare moments in horror history. I mean, it is, despite what you might think of the movie, it is one of the great jump scares of that ilk, of that kind of thing. I mean, now, they're so common and they're, we're so desensitized to it, but, I mean, you could go all the way back to 1976 to Carrie, which is sort of the kind of one of the first modern kind of at that time versions of that. And Friday the 13th, 4 years later, did their own version of that. And it was very effective. And, but as Victor Miller said, I mean, his intention was to never, to have Jason go on, and become this thing. That wasn't what I wanted to do. That had nothing to do with it. And so, but I mean, it's I think in retrospect, because Jason became such an icon, so iconic, and that hockey mask is so amazing, in terms of the symbol and what it, and that I think people now just, again, the one without Jason. Again, by the time I watched this movie, I was about 8 or 9 years old. It was 1987 or 88. And I rented it because I was being babysat, and I watched it with the babysitter. And I don't know if she had seen it or not. I'm not sure. She probably had. She was she was the target age. And so, but I always liked it. And it never bothered me that Jason wasn't in it. It didn't. But I think that is one of the main reasons. People say it's boring or it's slow. And I'm like, I don't think listen, switch out Pamela Voorhees for Jason. Nothing changes. It's just Jason. Well, I mean, it kind of goes this, it's kind of the same, you know? I will say that I think, I mean, apart from the guy who smokes a lot of weed and runs around in a, you know, Native American headdress, I forget his name now. He was like them, and there's Ralph too. You're all doomed. But I mean, in terms of the counselors, you know, everybody was kind of normal, you know? I think also too, I think one of the reasons why people don't like it, it doesn't have Jason, and they don't think that Alice is a good final girl. They think that Adrienne King's portrayal of Alice wasn't very, you know, charismatic. She wasn't very compelling. She wasn't very likable. When I say likable, I'm talking about her character. I'm not talking about Adrienne King. Adrienne King, I'm sure, is a lovely woman and perfectly fine. But in terms of the character, when you now have things to compare it to in retrospect, and you look at the final girl, especially in, you know, what's her face there? Oh God, wow, I hate getting old. Ginny, you know, from part 2. And then of course, you know, Chris in part 3 and, you know, and then you get Tommy, you know, I was gonna say Tommy Doyle. You get Tommy in parts 4 and 5 and 6, even though they're played by different people. And so, yeah, and I get it. And there's that weird scene. Well, and it happened at the beginning of part 2 as well, you know, where, you know, you have, there's this scene towards the end of the original Friday the 13th where Adrienne King's character, right, is just walking around. Alice is just walking around in the cabin. I think she's cooking up something. She's making tea or something, and she's just walking around. And I think it was to build suspense. But then the same thing happens with her character at the beginning of Friday the 13th 2. The opening of Friday the 13th 2 is the prologue for Friday the 13th 2 is just way too long. Again, I think it was to build suspense. I think they could have trimmed it down. I don't really know. I mean, Friday fans can help me out. You know, I know a lot of the phone conversation with her and her mom on the phone at the beginning of Friday the 13th part 2 was improvised. So whether they had a script, I don't know, or half of a script, part of a script, a portion of a script, but it's long too. And so her character faces that in 2, you know, at the end of the first movie and at the beginning of the second movie. So yeah, but so it doesn't have Jason. Alice isn't a good final girl. You know, I hear that. And those are the 2 big ones I hear. Alice isn't a good final girl. It doesn't have Jason. Oh, and of course, Betsy Palmer, Pamela Voorhees. Not Betsy Palmer, but Pamela Voorhees. They just, you know, and again, you know, you look, yes, it is. Obviously, it's 1979 when they shot the movie. And it's, or is it when they shot the movie? Yeah. No, it would have been because it was released in May. So I understand that. You know, it's, some of the acting is theatrical, you know, the performances can be a little theatrical. But I still think, and I will die on this hill, I still think the original Friday the 13th, although I understand the reasons why people don't put it anywhere near their favorites, because they want to see Jason. But if you just look at the film itself in a vacuum for a moment, just the film itself, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's, I don't. I think it's one of the better Friday the 13th films. I think it's, I do. And, you know, there's an argument to be made that it's not better than 2 or 3 or 4, or, you know, or something like that. But I still think it's one of the better films, in the series. For the things that I like, it's got great mood. It's got great atmosphere. It's got great kills. It's got great suspense, right? You know what I mean? It's got a great twist. You know, like, oh, who's this? You know, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that it's, you know, but anyway, it's interesting. Diddly-dee. Let me see here. Oracle684 says, yeah, the first one I love. I mean, it's in my top 3 of the franchise. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Hey, listen, if you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. Show some love for the original Friday the 13th that turns 45 today. Again, the original Friday the 13th was released on May the 9th, 1980. It is May the 9th, 2025, 45 years ago. Incredible. Let me see. Alley Girl, what's going on? Great to see Alley Girl. Great to see Alley Girl here. Jasmine Martinez. What's going on? Jasmine says, I'm not a fan of the Friday the 13th franchise, but I understand why many people love it. Maybe the new TV show will make me come around to the franchise. Well, maybe it will. Maybe it will. I mean, that's, that can happen. That can happen when you have an opportunity to give a character-driven story and open it up, and you have, your sandbox becomes larger to play in. There is that possibility. There is that possibility. For sure. I didn't miss any member chats, right? Or super chats or anything. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. No. Okay. I just want to make sure. Hallie Girl says, I thought, man, 45 years a long time ago. Then I realized I'll be 45 in December. Oh, it's a long time. It's still a long time. Yep, long time. Skate Tune says, Friday the 13th part 1 just don't sit right with me. Well, tell me why, Skate Tune. Tell me why the original Friday the 13th doesn't sit right for you. Tell me what it is. Jay Beach says, I made another stream. Hope everyone is well. Welcome, Jay Beach. Great to see you here. Let me see here. Scott Wood says the music helps those scenes. Talking to somebody. Listen, the music in that original Friday the 13th film is great. Actually, the music in the first 4 Friday the 13th movies. Bum 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 bum. It's so great. I love it. Brandon Collins says the prologue of part 2 is really slow, but that just means the rest of the film is tight as hell. It's 70 minutes of perfectly paced horror. There's no fat on that film at all after the credits. That is true. That's fair. But I still think maybe they could have just done something more. Again, it's not necessarily how long a scene is. It's what can happen in it, how it's paced, how it's edited, how it's cut. Very much like, if memory serves, and I could be wrong on this, but very much like towards the end of the first film, when Alice is just walking around sort of the kitchen area of the cabin, there's no music. And if you put music, it can help, right? It's like the Mr. Garrett scene in Halloween 2, which we talked recently about here. God, that scene it's unnecessarily long, and I understand the creative, and I've talked about this. Sometimes music helps. Sometimes no music is the best way to go, right? Sometimes no music is the best way to go. And so, I get it. I do. I really do. Nicholas Priori. Dave, as a voice actor, can you give us a quick look what you did to him? Look what you did. Oh, you mean from Pamela? Well, I can do that, but but I'm not going to sound like Pamela Voorhees, but I'll try to get the cadence right though. Look what you did to him. Something like that. Look what you did to him. I think she's kind of like that. Look, she starts low and emphasizes the him. It's more like, look what you did to him. It's like she screams him. But yeah, but that's not, but anybody could do that. Anybody could do that though. But I think that's what she did, right? I think she screams it on there. Skate Tune says, you hear it all the time in all horror movies that you can't beat the original Scream. Halloween, Child's Play. Well, Friday the 13th did beat the original parts 2, 3, 4, 6 were all better. Okay, but that's not telling me why, though. That's not telling me why, right? So I'm challenging you to tell me why it doesn't sit right with you. And that's totally fair. I mean, you're in the majority. I just would like to know what it is about the first Friday the 13th that doesn't sit right to you. What you've said here is a correct general consensus. The general consensus is that the first Elm Street is the best, right? The first Halloween is the best. Child's Play. Yeah, I agree. And the general consensus among Friday fans is that the first Friday is not the best. That is true, what you've said. But you haven't told me why you feel that way. So what is it about the first Friday the 13th movie that you don't like? That's what it is. Look what... Yeah, it's more like, look what you did to him! It's coming up like that. Look what you did to him! Did to him! It's coming up. There's a rise in it. Look what you did! Comes up like that. That's what she does. Daz says, in regards to the longness suspense of Alice's scenes, Sean Cunningham and Steve Miner just aren't on the same level of John Carpenter, who they were mimicking. Well, I get what you're saying, and I get what you're saying, but I don't think it's that black and white. I think some of these scenes could have been helped in the editing room, and some of these scenes could have been helped with some music. And, you know, John Carpenter's not infallible. I mean, he's not, he's made some, and so I think it just comes down to look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way. I'm just simply saying I don't think it's that black and white. I think there's a little more at play when I think about those scenes. But the intention of those scenes was to create suspense, but you're right. In the sense that it doesn't really, I mean, there's a little bit of suspense because it's lingering. And anytime you linger in a horror movie, you naturally create, some suspense, but, it's just the pacing of it. It's the editing, the pacing, the lack of music. And again, sometimes a lack of music can be very, very effective, and sometimes it's not. But yeah. Let me see here. Daz says Pamela is crazy. Of course she's theatrical. Yeah, well, she comes from that era, right? I mean, she was already in her 50s in 1980, right? So, I mean, she came up through the golden age of film. And so a lot of, and the reason why, and I'm simplifying this, but this is the Cliff Notes version. The reason why a lot of acting was a lot of on-camera acting was somewhat theatrical when you go and watch the earlier films from the the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, is because acting comes from the stage. And the reason why stage acting was very theatrical is because they were playing to an audience. And they were playing to an audience, not just the front row. In theater, you're often told to play to the person in the back, right? To play to the person in the balcony, not to the person in the front row, because they can see you, right? The person in the front row can see you. You don't, but you have to be big and theatrical to play to everybody. So when something, so you often see a bit of that whimsy come over into the earlier era of film and TV where it's just like, well, if that's what we're going to do, then I think that's what we must do, my dear. Well, I don't think that's what we're going to do, Roger. I think, well, he's not, well, I just don't think so. Well, you may not think so, madame, but I think you're going, it's big, it's theatrical because that's what the stage was like. And so if you were sitting way at the back, you could see that and you could hear that. Well, my dear, I think that we're going to do that anyway. Well, I think that, that wasn't necessarily how people behaved day to day in real life. Again, I'm giving you the very simplistic version of this. But acting, like every department, whether it's acting, whether it's directing, whether it's writing, whether it's costume, whether it's set decorating, set building, producing, it all comes from the theater. The only, I'm not the only, obviously, but the big thing that was new when movies were made and invented, and TV and all that, was cinematography, was the camera. But every other department comes from the theater. And so, and acting included in that. And so stage, again, I'm simplifying this, but generally speaking, that is why stage acting is so big. And eventually that began to wane, right? Over the course of the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean, acting in the 50s was a little less theatrical than it was in the 40s, and acting in the 60s was a little less theatrical than it was in the 50s, and, and so on and so forth, right? And then by the time you get to the, now, I mean, it's not over the top at all. It's very real. And that's because you're playing to here. This is where you're playing to, right? If you go too over the top when you're, on a movie set, you'll lose frame, right? You can't go, well, my dear, I think maybe unless it's a wide shot, right? Unless it's a master shot, which a lot of old films did shoot a lot of. But a lot of films today, of course, shoot in close-ups, medium shots, things like that. So you can't be, too over the top, or your head's going to go out of frame, right? And so when it comes to on-camera acting, you are often told to be smaller, right? You don't have to be as big. Unless, of course, your character is the Riddler, but from Jim Carrey or something. I mean, yeah, okay. Again, I'm speaking generally, but but Betsy Palmer grew up through that era, right? And so her, look what you did to him. Oh, I knew. Oh, he wasn't a very good swimmer. Oh, it's not like overly theatrical, but it is a little theatrical, right? Because she's one of those, actors that come from that era, right? And so, again, it in comparison, it's not, but it's also like the mid-Atlantic accent that you don't hear anymore either, right? I mean, way back in the 30s and the 40s, in the 50s, there was this thing called the mid-Atlantic accent. It was a fake accent. It wasn't real, that people were taught. You were taught. And that's why you'd hear people kind of talk like this. Well, my dear, I think it kind of sounds like it's a cross between a North American accent and a British accent, but it's neither. It's just very much like this, well, I think that's, and there were actual classes back in the day that you would learn how to speak a little more sophisticated. That's the way it was, my dear. It's fascinating. The history of Hollywood is unbelievably fascinating. And you don't really hear that anymore. Because you don't need to. But anyway, I digress, but fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. What's the time here? Okay, we'll go a little longer. Sacred Straight Productions says, Dave, for fun, which would you rather have done? Been Little Michael in 1978, Halloween, or Tommy Jarvis in Part 4? Oh, would I have rather have been Little Michael in 78, Tommy Jarvis in Part... Well, I'd pick Little Michael in Halloween, of course. Of course, I wasn't born. I was born a year later in 1979. But if I had a choice, yeah, I would have been Little Mikey Myers. I think that would have been cool. That would have been really cool. Of course, I totally would have taken the part of Tommy Jarvis as well. I would have turned down neither, but if I had a choice. Although Tommy Jarvis is the bigger part, which means the bigger money. And it's a speaking part, which means it's a principal part, which means it's more money. And so if I was a savvy, 10-year-old kid, if you want to make more money and yeah, I would have picked that part. But because I'm a Halloween fan, then why not do that? Vanderhoff says, I'm late to the stream. Where do you rank this movie, Dave? It's in my top 4. I would probably say for a long time, it was my favorite. that may still ring true depending on the day. But it's, but 2 is great. I love 2 as well. Love 4. I mean, it's in that top 4 for sure. I don't put it anywhere near the bottom of the list. I mean, there are people that put Jason X and Freddy versus Jason over this. I'm just like, what the kind of crack are you smoking, man? I mean, I respect that it's subjective, but like, I just can't get behind that. There are people put, let me try that again. I'm just reminding myself. There are people that put Jason Goes to Hell above this movie. I'm like, what? What's going on? Crazy stuff. Makes no sense to me. Skate Tune says, because an iconic killer wasn't born in the original. Pamela doesn't have legend status like the rest. The side characters get the glory after the original movie. Pamela did nothing iconic. Well, and that's why you don't like the movie. Okay, well, that's why you don't like the movie. Pamela did nothing iconic. Well, let me see here. Now, we have a prequel series that is on the horizon. This is going to be about Pamela, which is exciting. And this is actually, Skate Tune, this is actually a great example of what I was talking about on my show that I did a couple of weeks ago, talking about Linda Cardellini and the Friday the 13th prequel TV series. And how one of the reasons why, I'm one of the reasons why people don't want a Friday, or one of the big reasons why they don't want it about Pamela, is for the very reason that you just said right there. Now, I'm not calling you out. It's how you feel. Totally cool. I'm just using you as an example because it's the perfect example. And I think there's truth into what you're saying. There is truth. But again, I don't think it's that black and white. I think we can look at it from that perspective and we can simplify that and say she's done nothing iconic. Who cares about her, right? But at the same time, she's Jason's mom. And if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't have Jason. If it wasn't for the first Friday the 13th movie, you wouldn't have Jason Voorhees and the rest of the series that you love. But I think to be fair to the Pamela Voorhees character, and I said this on the show a couple weeks ago, the reason that you don't care about Pamela Voorhees, and the reason why a lot of fans don't care about a Pamela Voorhees prequel series, and again, Jason's going to come back, folks, but starting in terms of like way back at the beginning, is because you haven't been given the opportunity to care. And so it isn't that Pamela Voorhees is a shitty character. It isn't that Pamela Voorhees is a nothing burger character. It's that you haven't been given the opportunity to see her in a way where you can care about her, right? You haven't been given the opportunity to care about this character because the only thing that exists with Pamela Voorhees is the 1980 movie, okay, the beginning of Freddy versus Jason, and the beginning of the, remake, in 2009. And of course, her face in some sort of hologram form, in part 2, I get that. But I'm just saying, like, the character isn't shitty. The character is underutilized. The character has so much potential that it hasn't been tapped into yet. And all you think of, and I don't know how old you are, okay, but all you think of when you think of Pamela Voorhees is a 1980 movie with dated production value, theatrical acting from an actress from the golden age of Hollywood. It's not what you want, right? It's I don't care about that. It's not that it's a shitty character. There's a lot of untapped potential into the character of Pamela Voorhees. And it would not surprise me, Mr. Skate Tune, if this series is good. It's got great writing, great characters. Jason's coming eventually. But if they tap into this, and Linda Cardellini, I mean, come on, she's pretty easy on the eye. So if you're going to watch, hey, watch for that, if for nothing else. But it shows you, there's the potential to show you something you've never known you were missing. And then all of a sudden, if this series is good, if it's a great series, if it's good, and it doesn't have to be amazing, it doesn't have to blow your mind, it just has to be really good. Hey, that was good. That was good. It's not a train wreck. It's not a dumpster fire. It's not a catastrophe. It's good. It's a solid 7 out of 10. It's good at the very least, right? If it's a 3 out of 10, well, then, Houston, we have a problem. But if it's anywhere from 7, 8, that's good. That's good, right? And then now, if it's good, now you're going to see Pamela and the character of Pamela in a completely different light, in a completely different way. And you're going to think about that character think about that character in ways you've never thought about her before, right? So now when you think about her, you're not going to think of Betsy Palmer, you're going to think of Linda Cardellini. And it's going to rejiggle those neurons and synapses in your brain to have a different association with the character. Right now, you have a negative association with the character, which I think is a little unfair, but I understand what you're saying because you're not alone. What you've said is not unique. What you've said is what the vast majority of people say when they give reasons why they don't like the original Friday the 13th. But I don't think it's totally fair because there hasn't been an opportunity to have a fully fleshed out Pamela Voorhees yet. If there was a fully fleshed out Pamela Voorhees and you still didn't care, that's different. But this is like me saying, I don't give a shit about, I don't know. Some other, I don't know. I'm not sure yet, but I'm sure you can make, a similar association. So, I get what you're saying. All I say is just, be open-minded. And if this series is connected to the original set of films, it's going to make you look at that original film from a whole new perspective. I've seen it happen. I've seen people in your exact position not like something or whatever the case is, and all of a sudden something comes along and all of a sudden they see it from a whole new perspective. And all of a sudden they really like it. You know what I mean? It happens all the time. I think it's a little unfair what you're saying, but I do get what you're saying. But always remember, if it wasn't for Pamela Voorhees, you would have no Jason. And I don't mean that in the sense that she was Jason's mother, and if she hadn't given birth to Jason, yes, you could look at it from the character perspective in terms of like in the narrative, but I just mean in terms of the movie itself. If Victor Miller had not written that film, you would not have had Jason Voorhees because there would be no reason to. So if anything, no. Is Pamela Voorhees as iconic as Jason? No. Is she as beloved as Jason? No. No, of course not. Is she as liked as? No. No, of course not. No, not even close. But at the very least, it's kind of like Black Christmas, right? Black Christmas is one of the most important horror films in the history of horror. You may think it's boring. I don't know if you do, but I just mean you as in the collective you. You out there, all of you out there. You might think it's boring. You might think it's a snooze fest. And a lot of people do. A lot of people think Black Christmas is a boring pile of... They do. But even if you do, the cultural impact, how important that film is, it predates Halloween by 4 years, was released on the same day as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's one of the most important, significant films in the history of horror. And you don't have to like it to respect it, right? And so I think the same thing could be said here about Pamela. You don't have to like the original movie. You don't have to like the first, Pamela, boring, lame, I don't like this. Fair. That's totally fair. It's totally fair. I mean, I can't argue that. I mean, that's you. That's how you feel. That's totally fair. But I think when you look at it from a certain perspective and you realize this was the OG, this was the first film, and an important film in the slasher subgenre, an important film in the Friday the 13th lore, and if it wasn't for this movie, there would be no Jason Voorhees. And if there was no Jason Voorhees, there would be no Hockey Mask. And so, if anything, it's like, I'm not crazy on it, but I respect it. You know, I respect the importance of the Pamela Voorhees character and how important she is as a symbol, you know, in a lot of ways. And hopefully this new prequel series, Crystal Lake, will open up a whole new way of looking at the Pamela Voorhees character. And because there's so much untapped potential here. There just is. It's incredible. It's incredible. Alex Shambach says, how far into the series do you predict they will wait until they reveal Jason? Maybe not until the season finale. Do you mean like Jason, like adult Jason, hockey mask Jason? Oh, I would be surprised if they revealed him in the first season. I think it would likely be maybe a tease for a second season. Because from a writing again, you don't want to peak too soon, you know, because then you have nowhere left to go. And so doing it that way, as long as the writing is strong and the characters are strong and you can get the audience on board and emotionally invested into the universe, then yeah, I mean, having that as a tease for a second season is fantastic. I think you're going to see kid Jason though. You know, I don't know who that's going to be, but you're going to see little boy Jason. Yes, of course. But adult Jason, you know, but give it a chance. Give it a chance. I just ask all the Friday fans out there to give it a chance. You know, and like I said on the last show, it's not 1980 anymore, folks. Studios do not, again, I'm not saying that schlocky movies like that don't exist at all, but big studios don't want to make schlocky B movies like that. Horror has changed. It's not the 80s anymore. It's a very, very different time. And the market is different. And so I understand that there's people, it's just teens, tits, and blood in a camp. How hard can it be? I get it. But that's not going to last. As I've said many times, if you want that, that's cool, but it ain't going to last. Yeah, you might get one big movie out of that. You might get one season out of that, but it's not going to last. You need more meat on the bone. Now, don't implement a false equivalence. So what you're saying is, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, because most people go, so what you're saying is that it's, you know, has to be like Hereditary or some psychological elevated horror. No, it's a spectrum. There's a lot of gray area in here, right? It's not either tits, teens, and blood or The Shining. Those aren't your options, folks. It's about balance. It's about realizing that it's not 1980 anymore. We can't just deliver this over and over and over again and expect to be successful, right? Audiences want more. People want more. There's an opportunity here to deliver more. So, you know, let's put a little more meat on the bone. Keep the Friday the 13th DNA there, but put more meat on the bone. And that's all that means. And Brian Fuller was going to do that. He was going to do it before he left, you know, and don't be afraid of the word elevated, right? Because like I said on the last show, think of it like an apartment building or think of it like a big office tower, right? There's like a 90-story office tower. You can go from 1 to 90, or you can go from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Right. And that's all that means. There's 1 to 90 is like going from 1 to, 90 is like The Shining. You know what I mean? Like, no, yeah, that's like, all this, cinematic language and symbolism and this deep-seated psychological horror. Yeah. That's the top floor. But there's also the 5th floor and the 10th floor where there's just a little more meat on the bone. There's a little more story. There's a little more, maturity to it. But it still feels like Friday the 13th, looks like Friday the 13th, smells like Friday the 13th, tastes like Friday the 13th. You can do both, folks. It's not either or. What fans are worried about when they say they don't want that to happen, what they're worried about is they're worried about it going from 1 to 90. That's what they're worried about. They're worried about it turning into some sort of condescending, pretentious, cerebral Hereditary. That's what they're worried about. And that's why you hear fans say, it's just teens, tits, and blood in a cat. It's like, yes, but they can't just do that either because that's the basement. Okay, that if they just did that, that's the seedy basement where there's mildew and mold. And they can't just do that in 2025. It was schlocky and it sold and it was great in 1980, but you can't just do that in 1980 in 2025. So we've got to at least go to, floor number 6, we got to at least do a little something here, folks. Like you can't just, what? So every episode is going to be Friday the 13th part 3? Like, I mean, what are we doing? Like, you can't just do that. There has to be a story. There's got to be a through line with meat on the bone, with great characters and great performances, and your kills and your blood and your Jason and all that kind of stuff. It can be both. It can be both. And I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I have no idea. I'm just simply saying it can be both. All right, a few more minutes here. I'll go a few more minutes. And I'll call it a night. Well, see, Brandon, you said that before, but I've heard something different. I heard them say they have the rights to everything because this is television. And there's something, there's some sort of, look that up. Because I heard them say they have the rights to everything. It was an article not too long ago. The hockey mask was inquired, and they said, yes, everything. So, I agree with you. At face value, I would have thought the same thing. But I don't know if it's a loophole or something. I'm not familiar on the details of it. So look that up because I would like to know too. There's something going on with that. It's interesting. Kenny Pham says, I never had a problem with Pamela Voorhees. The actress's acting was awesome. Oh yeah. I mean, it's 1980. Oh no, I never did either. I'm just saying, when I say for people who might think of it as a little theatrical today, I'm talking about people who are younger and who might look at it as a bit cheesy and over the top. Brandon says 100% they are lying when they are saying that. Larry Zerner has spoken about this. Okay, well, I guess we'll see. We'll see, because I agree with you. I would think that exact thing as well. But there was something they said, and I even think Victor Miller said something about it as well. It's weird. It's weird. So I don't know why they would. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying there's conflicting reports, and it's interesting to dig into that a bit further, because I would like to know what the situation is there, because I tend to agree with you. I don't think that's possible. Jay Beach says, do you think the show Bates Motel helped the franchise? I've never seen Bates Motel, but I've heard good things about it, and I've heard that it's entirely possible that it did. So, yeah, that's entirely possible. Ra Silly says, the movie is set in 1979. I'm sure she did kills in the 50s and 60s and early 70s before the 1980 film. Yeah. Well, the thing is this, right? Like we know that she killed the two counselors who were, having sex and not watching Jason swim. And we know there's the carnage, in the 1980 film. But to your point, did she kill after that? Like, did she develop a thirst for blood? Did she develop a taste for it? Like, we don't know these things. Like, I'm going to laugh. If this series is so fucking great, because we've seen this happen before to varying degrees in varying circumstances. And we've also seen it fail as well. I'm not saying we haven't seen it fail, but we've seen things like this. Whether it's, oh my God, Michael Keaton is cast as Batman, Mr. Mom, or Heath Ledger's the Joker. And, like we've seen things like this before to varying degrees in different areas where fans get their knickers in a twist. I'm not saying they shouldn't. And then all of a sudden something happens and it's delivered like it's amazing. And all of a sudden, like, it wouldn't surprise, like, my fingers are crossed. It wouldn't surprise me if by the end of that first season, Friday fans are like, fucking Pamela Voorhees is fucking badass, man. Fucking Pamela Voorhees, yeah! Pamela Voorhees, fucking badass, man. And now all of a sudden you have this new, association with how badass Pamela Voorhees is. You know what I mean? That wouldn't surprise, I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's an uphill climb. And then, of course, you're always going to get certain fans that are, they'll just hate anything out of spite. Even when something's good, they'll just hate it because they can't bring themselves to like it because, well, they've told everybody how much they're going to hate it, and now they can't backtrack, But it happens. It does happen. Tom Hungarian says, I watched Psycho last night. That score is insane. Oh, it's great. 40,000 in 1960 was a lot of money. Was a lot of money. She had a look. I ain't watched it in a long time. It was. Oh, for sure. Psycho is fantastic. I mean, Psycho, it's so funny how far we've come. I've been watching a lot of old episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show. I'm a huge fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show. Any of those shows. Dick Van Dyke, Leave It to Beaver, I Love Lucy. But the Dick Van Dyke Show I just adore. And, they couldn't even have Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore sleeping in the same bed. Now, this is 1961 to 66. It's not that long ago. It's a long time ago, especially if you're very young. But I'm just saying it's not that long ago. It's like when we talk about, it's crazy to think, and I don't want to get off on a thing or get off. I don't want to go on a thing about this, go off on a thing about this. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's crazy to think that World War II wasn't even 100 years ago. The murder of 6 million Jews and Adolf Hitler and World War II and the bombings in Japan, that wasn't even 100 years ago. That's crazy to think how different, and how in many ways we are still the same. But how different, you know what I mean? And so the 1960s wasn't that long ago, 60 years ago. It's not that long ago. And yeah, they were not allowed to sleep in the same bed. They had to sleep in separate beds on TV because that was, and they couldn't even say the word pregnancy. Because there was an episode where, Mary Tyler Moore was pregnant, and they couldn't even say the word pregnant. This is the mid-60s. They couldn't say the word pregnant. They had to say expecting. Oh yeah, it's fascinating. It's crazy how different things were back then. I don't know how I got off on that, or why I started talking about that, but it's interesting. Yeah. Why did I start talking? Oh, I guess just how different things were. Psycho. Yeah. Psycho, I stand to be corrected on this, but I believe Psycho was the first movie in North America, at least, maybe not overseas, but the first movie in North America, I believe, to ever show on screen a toilet flushing. Now, to be fair, there are probably not that many movies in existence that show toilets flushing, but it was the first movie. Now, there wasn't anything in the toilet except for the photo or the piece of paper that what's her face ripped up. But I'm just saying it was the first time we saw a toilet flushing. And that's 1960. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Very different. Very different. But yeah, the Dick Van Dyke Show is amazing. There's free episodes on YouTube if you want to watch. I love it. The writing, Carl Reiner, Rosemary. Oh my God, legend. Of course, Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke. It's so funny. If you're a lot younger than me, maybe you'd be like, what the hell is this old piece of shit? I love it. I think the writing is great. Dick Van Dyke is a fucking brilliant treasure. He's hilarious. The show. Oh yeah, I love it. Oh, and I just started watching for the first time, because obviously this is way before my time, but I started watching, and it's a pretty good show too, is Father Knows Best from the 50s. It's actually a good show. There's free episodes on YouTube as well. And I'd always heard about it, but I never watched it. And so Father Knows Best. Yeah, it's just fun. Old black and white sitcoms they're really good, man. It's so different. It was so good. And it doesn't need to be crass or sexy or innuendo. It's just funny. It's just really funny. And the performances are great. So good. Anyway. Brandon says, I have a feeling this show might be good, but the fans are going to hate it because there's no Jason. It's going to be very much like Bates Motel, and they just won't want that. Well, there's a good possibility of that, Brandon. There's a good possibility that it might, that might happen. There's a lot of people that, especially those, if you are a content creator and you are somebody who has a channel and you've been spewing the gospel of how much you hate something, if something comes along and that something you've been saying is going to be crap, is actually not too bad. And we've seen this in other areas of fandom. They cannot now admit that it's actually not that bad. But we'll see. We'll see. J Beach says, I still watch the Odd Couple and Taxi. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Odd Couple, Taxi's really good. Yep. Dick Van Dyke is almost 100. I know. And still relatively spry. I know. And Rose Marie, I've been learning a lot about Rose Marie, who died in 2017 at the age of 94. And she got her start as a little girl. Like, she was born in 1923. She got her start in like 1926 or 27 at the age of 3 or 4. There's YouTube videos of her black and white where she's dancing at this little girl, this short kind of black hair kind of haircut. This is way before Shirley Temple. And she was amazing. And Rosemarie has kind of this kind of raspy, deeper New York kind of accent. And she's so great. I think she's great and funny. And sexy in her own right too. Like, she was just great. And I just think she's. So I've been learning a lot about her because I've seen her and I'm like, I want to learn. Like how. I learned a lot about Betty Davis years ago and Joan Crawford years ago, and I'm learning about these old, some of these older classic golden age stars that I've always known about but haven't really dug deep into. So I've been learning a lot about Rose Marie over the last few days, and she had like her father knew like Al Capone. I'm just like, what the fuck, man? And she used to dance for Al Capone in like these jazz clubs in Chicago, and I'm like, holy shit, that's where she used to call him Uncle Al. I'm like, it's fucking wild. Legend. I mean, it's just crazy. And so it's just, and of course you watch her on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and you're like, shit, and she was I like Betty Davis. Rose Marie was a no bullshit tough cookie, man. And Betty Davis was, you can fuck around with Betty Davis, fuck yeah, amazing. Anyway, yeah, awesome stuff. No harsh language podcast. I have not seen Sinners yet. No, nobody asked it, but I haven't seen it yet. I still have to see it. I haven't seen it. I don't know if I'll get to the theater to see it, but I haven't seen it yet. All right, folks. Well, listen, that's going to do it for this episode of McRae Live. I really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you to the member chat, super chats, and to my moderators. I really appreciate it. And happy 45th birthday to the original Friday the 13th, released on May the 9th, 1980. It's May the 9th, 2025. And jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on the original Friday the 13th. Anything I had to say here today, but specifically the original Friday the 13th from 1980. Let me know your thoughts. Where do you rank it? How do you love it? What was your first experience seeing it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And I will be back with another episode soon at some point. Have a great rest of your Friday night, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great rest of your weekend if I don't see you before Monday. And I will talk to you all very, very soon. Alrighty. In the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you soon. Cheers.